Welcome to Hope in the Light of Suicide. I'm Tammy White.
I'm Bonni Snyder.
And we want to welcome you to our show. Before we get started, I want to put a big shout out to Rob, who helps produce this show, and to WeBeam TV for allowing us to bring this show and information to all of you guys. And today we have a special guest, don't we, Don?
I'm excited about our guest today.
Would you like to introduce our guest?
I would be honored to introduce our guest today. As you know, that this program was designed to talk about, suicide loss and suicide loss survivors. And so it is our honor and my blessing to introduce our guest today. His name is Carl Phillips. I have a special connection with Carl. He is my oldest son, but he's also Aydin's father. And so we're really excited to have Carl on the show with us today to talk about, being a suicide loss survivor, and, have him tell you in his words what that experience was like for him, especially, for us coming up on Monday. Aydin would have been 16. And, of course, 7 days after that or 6 days after that, is the second year anniversary of us losing him. So, Carl, welcome to the show today. I'm so happy and thrilled that you could join us today. And Tammy, I got to tell you, I think today is, for me anyway, is going to be a tissue day.
I've been right there.
I have a feeling that today for me is going to be a tissue day.
Yeah.
But Carl, welcome to the show. And again, of course, I'm thrilled that we're both thrilled that you are here.
I am too. I finally get to meet you.
Well, thanks for letting me come on.
Yes. It's as Tammy and I, started this, show, with John, our producer's urging, prompting, that we do this. And, this all started with Tammy's vision of the Bobby White Foundation in relation to, or started after, her husband's death by suicide. There's Bobby right there. As I said, explained to you, Carl, Tammy and I met a couple of years back at a meeting, and, she started talking about the purple folder, which we'll get into, later on. But that meeting, progressed into a friendship, and it progressed into what we're doing now. So I think what we'd like to start off with is to have you share what your experience was, or, if you're able, talk about, losing Aydin and what that was like then, and what that was like, what it's like now, and how you deal with it, to give our viewers a first-hand accounting of, the father of, as Aydin's dad.
It's still really, really surreal, if I'm being honest. It's crazy because it's like it happened yesterday. I got up the morning of the 14th, like I normally do. Made coffee and started playing some video games. So it's kind of my early mornings, like my uninterrupted me time. And Kira, Aydin's mom, called, and my phone was on. Excuse me, my phone was on silent. I had my headphones on while I was gaming, and Joy came in the living room and was like, "Hey, Kira's trying to reach you." Call her back, and what she said didn't register. She said she'd found Aydin in his closet, and me, here's a 14-year-old boy. I'm thinking she caught him in his closet, watching something or whatever. I didn't really grasp what she was actually saying I remember Joy asking if she should go to work or if she should go with me, because Kira said I needed to come over. And at first I was like, no, go to work. It's fine. It's Valentine's Day. I was expecting, her to go to work, maybe do some housework, and kind of get the house ready for, Valentine's Day. And I don't know what it was, but something said to have her go with me. So she got in the car and headed out to Kira's. I remember calling you on the way out. Again, not really understanding what was going on, and asking if you'd call Aydin like later that day and talk to him, to kind of see what was going on, see if he gave you some different information than what he would give me during our conversation. It ended up being a car ride out, just a normal car ride out, really. Joy and I were just having random future conversations and trying to figure out what we were gonna do to help Aydin with whatever was going on. I remember getting there, and Kira, Nick, and Shirley and Mikey sitting in the car, and there were like two sheriff's vehicles, and we were walking up to the door and asking Kira, again, it hadn't really sunk in what she meant. Okay, so where's our son? Like, I was actually just gonna take him for the day and just kind of hang out with him and, kind of get his mind off of whatever was bothering him. I just remember her saying, looking at me like I was crazy and saying he's gone. It took a little bit, like to process hearing those words. As a parent, you never expect to outlive a child. It's supposed to be the other way around. And I remember, walking off and threw my hat. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm really particular about hats, and for me to chuck one is a thing. I remember calling you back, and you were either had just started a class or were getting ready to start a class, and telling you and you asking me what I needed, and it was just the, get here when you can. So we're sitting there, I'm having all of this time to, process what's going on. We're sitting there, waiting for the medical examiner to show up. And remember the detective that responded, because, it's procedure, right? The medical examiner had gotten there, and I asked to see him. And I remember the detective saying I couldn't, and, in typical me fashion, my response was, I failed to see where I asked your permission. And seeing, such a vibrant, caring being, that I never get to talk to again, sucks. As far as like the coping part goes, I haven't gone back to Power Play. This is the last place that we took him for his birthday. I avoid going to like 54th Street Bar and Grill. That's where we took him for his birthday dinner. There's certain sounds or smells, that just remind me that I can't just say like on a Friday or Saturday, hey bud, let's go do whatever. A lot of it is I have a really, I can honestly say I have a really good support system. Between Joy, my other kids, my mom, obviously, for the days that that it's really rough. It's weird. It's weird Kira and I were just having a conversation about it. Aydin was talking to his girlfriend, like, as he was, going through with it, and everyone being upset that this little girl didn't say anything, and did the worst thing you can do as far as coping goes, and play the what if game. What if this little girl had said something, and Kira and Nick had gone and checked on him, but it was at the point that he caused brain damage. Would having him here but having to take care of him 24/7 be better than him not being here? Sure, but it's a different set of burdens and griefs that way. What if she'd said something and we caught him before anything bad happened? Did we get another day, another month, another year? Again, it's like I said, it's the worst. It's the worst thing to go through those what if scenarios. I try and stay busy. It sucks because 6 months later, his baby sister was born, and he'll never get to meet her, and she'll never get to see like how awesome a person he is. And then fast forward 2 days after that, and I get a call that my little brother's gone as well. 2019 sucked.
It did. It did for our family. It did. And I was going to ask, you on the, that you brought up, Brixie being born on the 9th, and then 2 days later, you getting that phone call that said, I need you to come to Florida now. If I remember, my words were, I hate to do this to you, but I need you to come to Florida now. Your little brother's gone. And,
That was a crazy turnaround, because we'd just gotten, like, we'd literally, I spoke to Jean, and Jean said she hadn't heard from him, and then, an hour and a half, 2 hours later, you letting me know that he was gone. The initial thought was, man, like, I literally just got home from Tulsa, and I have this newborn, and then obviously, and it was, and I can admit it now, as kind of selfish, but there was that, that thought, of, man, I just went through this, I just went through this with my own youngest son, and I don't want to go through it again. And as soon as that happened, it was my mom has been there for me every day of my life, through every success and every failure, and she needs me now. I remember just loading up the car, joining the baby back to Tulsa. So, 2-day old baby. I didn't want to have her in the car for 19 hours. And then blasting down there, to be the strong one, for having to repeat on the opposite side, the same thing that my mom had to go through for me. But in this case, being the support for my mom.
Tammy and I have been reviewing, with our audience over the last couple of weeks, what's referred to as the Survivors Bill of Rights. And one of those bills of rights, talks about grieving in our own time and doing things in our, processing it in our own way. And when you talk about that role reversal that we went through in our family, here, with Aydin, I felt like I'm coming to Kansas to support you and support Kira, and help the family get through us losing Aydin, only to have you guys, do a reverse role and come here when we lost Patrick. If you got for the audience, you guys may not know, Joy is Carl's current wife, and Jean is is my daughter, his sister. Jeannie was going to be on the show with us today with her brother, but unfortunately she had a schedule conflict at the last second that popped up. So hopefully we'll have her on as a guest, at a later date. Carl, how do you deal with, or what are, and Tammy, please jump in at any time. Jump in at any time. What are your thoughts, or how have you processed when you hear people say things like, he's in a better place, this was God's will, or, all of the other common phrases that we hear from people when a loved one, passes on. His number was up. And we'll talk a little bit, in a second about, the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, the what ifs. But, how do you deal with the common phrases or common statements that you hear from people when when they talk about loss?
So, it's weird. Most of the time I just exit the conversation. It's just like, no one wants to hear that. Where loved ones are concerned, the better place, is here. Being able to share experiences and create memories. It took a while. It took a while to not get upset when people said things like that. I had to reevaluate, an opinion that I hold, and that, from the moment of conception, you have a finite amount of time. It's predetermined, and when that time's up, that time's up. It's the, for the first 6 to 8 months, I can honestly say that I got angry every time I heard it. And then again, realigning, my personal belief, about, your finite amount of time, and understanding that as humans, the way we view time is so small compared to what time actually is. And no one actually deals with loss, whether it's a loved one or a loved one of a friend or a complete stranger. We're not really equipped to deal with that in any way, really. That's why everyone grieves different, and a lot of times those offerings of condolences aren't so much about the loss. It's about it's almost I had to start looking at it from a standpoint of, I know what you're going through hurts and it sucks, but I don't have the words to say that in a way that will show you that I'm trying to show that I care that you're going through this, and just understanding that we don't have that that capacity to conversate about loss in a way that's productive to the grief process, has made it to where now when I hear those things, it's thank you, and then I quickly change the subject because it's not something I want to dwell
on. At the risk of bringing up, something that's painful. I mean, talking about Aydin being gone, is painful enough. But, as we're talking about the grief process, can you share with the audience some of what you shared with me as, relating to seeing Aydin at the house and seeing Aydin during the wake? Like, I don't know if you remember, what you said to me about that, what that did for you. And I asked that question with this follow-up question. In our line of work, my line of work, we talk about this thing called closure. Eventually, we experience closure. Again, if you could talk about that, that comparison, I guess, for lack of a better word, seeing Aydin before they took him away, seeing Aydin during the wake, and your thoughts, as another parent, about this word closure.
So, seeing him, at the scene, and understanding, the effects of certain outside stimuli, not stimuli with that. I don't even know what stimuli is. That's a made up word. Don't use it. Like seeing him immediately after, before any of the cleanup, like even hearing that he was gone, before seeing him, it wasn't real, and then seeing him, there's that moment of, no, this is actually happening, but still being in disbelief, and then seeing him at the wake, it was literally like just seeing him sleeping. I think that closure is a terrible word when it comes to loss and trauma. So I don't think you ever really close off, that experience. It goes back to the grief box that you and I talked about right after Pat passed. The pain's there. The pain's in a box. And it's wired to a button, and there's a ball inside that box. And initially, the ball's huge, so any movement of the box pushes the button and brings all that pain back to the surface. And as time progresses, it's not so much that you forget that loss or you get closure on that loss. It's that the triggers for that pain get spaced out more. The ball's still going to hit the button. Like, it's going to hit the button forever. It's just the stimulus that causes that pain, or the frequency of that pain, finally starts to go away, or lessen. You called me the other day after you got Pat's phone back, and just having that, that moment of breakdown. We got off the phone, and I was in a place where I was like, man, I wish my mom was closer, just so I can go over, just hug her, or, go for a drive or whatever, just something, something to kind of distract her. And we walked down the hallway to get a towel because Brixton had spilled something. And there's an Adventure Time blanket I gave Aydin for Christmas that I don't want anyone to touch because it still smells like him. Like it's still him. And I've probably opened, the linen closet 1,000 times since it got put in there, since I moved in, since we bought the house. And for whatever reason, that particular time, I opened the linen closet, and it was like this blanket jumped out at me. I just remember, cleaning up Brixton's mess, and then just going and sitting on the bed. It's probably a good 25, 30 minutes of what could I have done? What could I have done different that this isn't what I'm feeling?
How did Patrick's death affect, you talk about that, and I love the analogy, the ball in the box, and in the beginning the ball is huge, and any movement it touches and pushes a button and there you are, and over time, the ball gets smaller. And if the ball doesn't ever, Tammy, I would say you too, the ball never really goes away. I think
and we've talked about closure, before, and it's just not ever going to be there.
Exactly.
You're always going to have, and I think even that quote that I read, was it last week or the week before? I can't find it right now, but it kind of references to the same thing that Carl is saying about that. It does get maybe a little bit smaller, but it's always going to be there.
How did Patrick's death, Carl, affect the ball in your box? How did I guess that's, because like for me, when I think of, closure, in regards to Aydin's death, a part of me is, mind you, I'm here in Florida. Got to drive from Florida to Kansas for Aydin's death. And unfortunately, as you know, for us, on our way there, we had that crash.
I was sorry to interrupt you, but it's crazy because, I'm driving to drop Jordan Brixton off, and obviously I have, Jesse and Trent in the car with me, on the way down. And the whole way down, the whole trip down, one of the nagging thoughts was, whatever you do not wreck your damn car on the way down here, because I don't want to have an almost, event for event replication of 6 months ago.
It's interesting that you say that, again, to our audience as a reminder, and we shared, when I was going to Kansas for Aydin's service, we got into this little town of Cadiz, Kentucky, and hit a patch of black ice and, flipped the truck. So unfortunately, that resulted in was myself, my daughter, Patrick, and, four of the other grandchildren. We never made it to Aydin's wake. So, unfortunately, we really did not get a chance to say goodbye to Aydin, before, the service, and the cremation. And that's still kind of sticks with me today. Like I did not get to see him, and feeling a combo of sadness, of course, but then also couple that with grief, and there's some anger in there too.
Oh yeah.
That what was the reason for this crash? And then, pondering, oh my gosh, are we even going to make it for the service? And like I said, thank God for Sue and Brandy and Amanda and Heather. Sue, the lady who, here's my credit card, go rent your car. Brandy and Heather, her daughters, and then Amanda, one of their friends from the hospital that we were treated in. All got this whole community banded together to make sure that we were able to get from Cadiz to Kansas, and then from Kansas back to Florida. And you're right, son, that would have been, I would have asked God, and I know we don't preach religion, but I believe in God. I would have asked God, what is going on here that the same, like we're replicating the same thing.
No, hard pass.
But
so two things. One to answer the question that you asked, but also to touch on you not seeing Aydin. Now, I'll start there actually. I 100% get wanting to see him, and as a as your oldest, and going through a lot of the turmoil leading up to now, and being the person you call when you need to just vent, or that voice of reason that you need sometime. um, I honestly think the accident was the universe's way of saying, um, if you see him now, in some way, it's going to prolong, that feeling of grief. And that's me looking for a silver lining, and a car accident, on your way up. Now, as far as Patrick's death and the effect on the box, what it in effect did is it created a second box, but it put that box on top of the box that already existed. The pre-existing box has holes in it, so there are times when, I've had times where I'm gaming, or I look at the tattoo I got, for both Aydin and Patrick, and both of those balls end up in the same box, and they take turns tagging the button. It's just like looking at the parallels between who Patrick was as a person, who Aydin was as a person, and how similar they are. And the fact that I've always felt like Patrick was my right arm. Like without it, I'm not me. Like I need that. I need that energy to play off of almost. And then how close Pat and Aydin actually were, throughout everything. I remember, going to get the boys from school, and letting them know, hey, Uncle Pat's coming over, and Aydin just lighting up because of how much he enjoyed his time with Pat, and then couple that with them being people that I wanted, and I still do. I know I can't have it, but selfishly, all I can think of is I have to explain to Brixton at some point, hey, you actually have two brothers, and Daddy had a little brother, who passed like right at the same time you were born, and how unfair it is to her that she never gets to meet those two people, especially knowing, the type of impact that both Pat and Aydin would have on her life.
Take your time, son. I remember, speaking of Patrick being your right arm, and, of course, as your mom, I could attest to that. Because I remember when you called, after, that initial, Mom, he's gone, you calling me periodically, during the day, like, it was like, Mom, he's gone. And then, you had to get off the phone, because, they were, so they can finish processing. And I hate to call it the scene, but, they had to finish processing the scene and, take Aydin away. When you called back later the day, I remember you saying, where is my little brother? And although I was, I was like, took a gasp when Patrick said, what he said, but we know that was his, that was his humor and his way of, but I remember walking in the house and looking at Pat and saying, your brother needs you to call him. And, first he was, a little like, what's up, I have brothers and, siblings do. But I told him, I said, Pat, Aydin's gone and your brother is asking for you. And, Patrick took a step back and, just watching the dynamic between the two of you and listening to him, talking and, trying to console you, little did he know that, or little did any of us know that 6 months later, he would be gone. If you can, Carl, can you talk a little bit about how all of this has affected your other children? Aydin has, and I want to get the number right, so correct me if I'm wrong. I jokingly tell people, I have to think about this for a minute. Aydin has 5 other siblings. Thank you, son. And, for me, I, see on social media some of the, comments and postings of, especially the older siblings. But how has these experiences not only affected your relationship, or has it changed your relationship with his siblings? At the same time, how has it changed, from, how have you noticed from their relationship with each other?
So, it's a really interesting dynamic. I will say that Jessica, the oldest, and Mackenzie, the youngest girl, well, second youngest girl, they are both much more open about how they grieve. I can see it now that starting on for the next week or so, Jesse's Snapchat will be pictures of her and Aydin, and just kind of going through that. I will say that those two are probably the most open about how they feel about the loss. Raven's incredibly angry. She's mad that she didn't. She's mad because she feels like she should have seen, that there was something going on and that she should have done something. But then she's never really left that anger stage because all she can think about is her words, not mine, how unfair and selfish it was of him to put everyone through that. I don't think Trent's actually hit the point where where he accepts it, which is both good and bad. Good in that he hasn't taken on like anything self-destructive, but bad because when it finally hits, he's got all of this time, storing that up, and it's all going to come out at once. As far as the relationships between the other kids, just among themselves, they've always been relatively close. Even with typical sibling squabbling. And as far as like our relationships, I get a text message from Raven, Jess, and Mackenzie once or twice a week. Hey, are you off tomorrow? Can we come hang out? I will say that they, them being older and not being at the mercy of their moms, has made it to where we spend a lot more time together. It doesn't hurt that all of the older kids also have cars and are willing to drive now, so it's not coordinating, who I need to pick up or who's going to meet wherever. And pretty much anytime Raven's here, Trent's here, and actually, I take that back. Trent's coping mechanism right now is actually spending time with Brixton. I don't know if you haven't seen those two interact yet. Brixton is undecided on whether or not she likes Trent, and Trent loves her. So there's this weird, like, I'll come hang out with you, but for a minute, and then you need to leave me alone because I don't trust you, dude. But yeah, I don't. There's been like no negative impacts on relationships. Our topics of conversation are different now, but that's about it.
Yeah, it is. I sit back and I wonder, like, if we think about, our relationship, after, losing Patrick, I found myself wanting to call me, like, before Patrick, before Aydin, but then even a little after Aydin and before Patrick, it was like, Carl and I will talk, and I do refer to him as my voice of reason. It's like whenever I'm in one of those spaces and, I need to vent or I need a point of view from somebody who is going to tell me like it is, not hold back anything, give me a truth, mind you, in a respectful way. I mean, he still remembers just because he's the age that he is. I'm still his mom. But
6 or 60.
I'm sorry?
6 or 60, doesn't matter.
But I find myself, needing to call, especially him more. Like, Jeannie lives here in Florida, so if I want to see her, I can just drive, the hour to Tampa where she is. But I find myself wanting to call him more, or reach out more. So, I'm texting more. I'm, calling more. Where before it was like, he's, got a wife and, a baby. She'll be 2 this year. And he works, so it's like, okay, where before it was okay not to talk to him for, a week at a time, or, I didn't talk to Carl this week. Okay. He was probably busy. Now it's like, there's something wrong. If
Man.
Talk.
So it's super funny. So like when you text, don't forget about today, right? Why were you up? Go to bed. Like, sleep. It's important.
I'm always up early, son.
Ma, you texted me at 1:15 in the morning. That's not I'm up. That's you need to go to bed.
Okay, so I have to explain that being up at 1:30 in the morning. I took my second COVID shot.
Oh, congratulations.
The other day. Yeah, thank you. And, the first one wasn't so bad. The second one, kind of threw me for a loop a little bit. And so I spent the entire day yesterday in bed, asleep more than I was awake. And so, yes, I was awake at 1:30 which, okay, it's just 2 hours earlier than what I'm normally awake. But that's why, son, I slept most of the day yesterday.
So it's weird. So I got the text message. I heard my phone go off. And I went to reach for it to respond to you when you text me. And against, the one thing that I asked not happen with Brixton, obviously did. Yay, first-time moms. Brix is in bed, asleep, and as I went to reach for my phone, she was like, hey, this is the time that I need juice and for you to change me, so forget what you were doing, focus on me. Which is why you got a response at like 6 this morning instead of
Gotcha.
1 last night.
Son, what are resources like for you in Kansas? Because I'm going to use that as a nice segue, to remind people about our purple folders, which Tammy put together due to her experience, with Bobby's loss. But what resources have you? Are they available there in Kansas for you, and what I know we would love to have Kira on, but unfortunately being a nurse, understaffed, we'll get her one day. But, she's to talk about, what she's done in relationship to Aydin's death. But, from your perspective, what resources?
So, it's crazy because I knew that I cared about suicide awareness and suicide prevention before Aydin. I knew that I cared about abuse counseling and treatment before Patrick. Um, it like literally the day after. It's like the day after Aydin passed. It was like all of these like suicide support groups popped up. It was like they just sprung out of nowhere. So there's a weekly group. My work schedule, working retail, makes it really hard to go out, so I haven't been out yet. But Kira and Raven go to a group like every Wednesday. It's just, again, getting my schedule to work out so where I can actually go. Fortunately, I work for an amazing company that offers like counseling and therapy to every employee at no cost. I have we literally have a dedicated line that we can call, for grief or trauma or pretty much anything. And then my district manager and above, obviously dealing with me being gone in February and then again in August for a loss, take a really strong interest in making sure that I have all of the tools and resources I need. And I can't throw a rock in any direction and not hit a resource or support group. One just through obviously sharing the experience with Kira, and the resources that she's found, and then the resources from work. There's a nonprofit organization that was in the mall that I was in for a long time, that was going to lunch one day and noticed they had this wall, and it was like I forget the hashtag, and I feel terrible for not remembering it. But it's basically a wall where people were, leaving notes to complete strangers on why suicide isn't the answer. But in talking to the young lady who actually runs that program, she pointed me in the direction of a couple of groups that actually meet by Zoom. So I have no reason to not meet. No, there's an abundance of resources in the Kansas and Missouri area. I didn't realize it was as big a thing here as it is. But I think within 15 minutes of me, there are 6 or 7 organizations that deal specifically with loss from suicide or substance abuse.
Now, in the interest of time, can you give us a short answer? Because again, I want to get to reminding people about our purple folder, and we're down to our last 7 minutes of show. Aydin's death happened on Valentine's Day, which for most people this is a day of flowers and chocolates and love and all of the things that we think about traditionally for Valentine's Day. But for us, it is also an anniversary of the loss of one of just the sweetest individual, one of the sweetest individuals that we know. How does Valentine's Day changed for you?
So, and when, like when you have Kira on, like she'll probably tell you the same thing. Of the overly commercialized holidays, Valentine's is actually my favorite. It's that one time that I can show the person I'm with how much I actually care. I proposed to Joy on Valentine's Day. You know, it's weird because she and I were actually just talking about it. And it's like, I don't really want to celebrate Valentine's Day because I feel bad, enjoying a commercial holiday that I really enjoy because it's a way to show that softer side of myself. Because there's also this other, there's also the fact that it's the anniversary of Aydin dying. So I don't hate Valentine's Day, but my approach to it is kind of one of those like, yeah, whatever. I still try and do those little things to show that I care, but at the same time, I really just want I just want to be by myself, because that's my reflection time basically.
That is true. And I mean, we also had it this year where Brixton was born on the 9th. Patrick died on the 11th. And as we were doing the celebration of Brixton's birthday, her birthday party would have been on the 11th. So let's have it on Saturday. And I forget whether it was, Carl or Joy had said, wait a minute, the 11th. We can't do it on the 11th. That's, quote unquote, Patrick's
Right.
Day. And so we changed it. Carl, you can hang out with us for a bit. Tammy, if you can, talk to people about, our purple folder, as we ride this episode out.
I know it always ends up getting away from us. At
Yes.
The end. So I'm really glad to hear that Carl has all those resources out there, because it's kind of like in Florida. I found we didn't, and that's why I started the foundation and worked diligently on our purple folders for resources for people. And mostly it is, people call me and that know that we have these available to people, and we did our second revision on them. Actually, our first revision on them. It's our second printing, and included more resources that we're finding slowly, and resources that can be used throughout the country. So we can mail these, and we have mailed them across the country over the past year and a half that we've had these available. And as we go on, we do find more resources. But yeah, here locally, it's been really, really difficult. I'm so happy to hear that out in Carl's area that it's much different.
Yeah, it is very interesting finding that, some areas, as we know, suicide affects. It's not a Florida thing. It's not a Kansas thing. It's not a...
It's actually a worldwide thing.
It is. But like you, hearing Carl say, I can throw a rock in either direction, and within 15 minutes there's a resource for me. Not to mention, he does work for an amazing company that has really been very supportive of him through the process.
Right.
But us not having that same.
Yeah, it does. It was probably 5 or 6 months before I even found out that we had a Tampa chapter of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I went all those months with, there was, I don't know, it was a big void, and here in our area, but I'm glad that in other areas that's not the case.
And for me, it was always when someone asked me where are the resources, of course my brain went to, who I work for.
Right.
But then at the same time, I'm like, and what other, or the VA, being a veteran, so it was the
Right.
VA and who I work for is where my brain immediately went to. and saying, wait a minute, let me do some research on what are the other resources out there. And, through this, it got me thinking, wow, why aren't we able to just pop off, like off the top of our head, do the
Right.
resources exist? So,
Well,
yeah.
and I did find another one, and we're gonna run out of time, so we're probably gonna have to do this.
Really quick, Ma. Do you guys not have the walk out of the darkness there?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
We do.
And that
Okay.
that's when that's when I first found out. Yeah, I found out through Facebook.
Ours is usually in October, right?
Right, it's in
We do
October.
it in October, son.
Yeah, but
I think ours. Well, no, ours was close to St. Patty's.
Yeah, ours is October, and when I do it, I have that button, that says I walk for Aydin.
Yeah, we made shirts.
Yeah, Aydin's Avengers, which I don't know if you've noticed here on our set. Actually, Kira was the one who pointed it out to us. On our set, we have an Avengers thing over here, and we have an arrow over here, and it's just so fitting. Aydin was in archery, and his team is Aydin's Avengers.
I'll after the program, I gotta send you a picture, Ma.
Okay.
well, again, we're gonna run out of time. So, so next week we'll talk about the next couple suicide survivors bill of rights. One of the resources that I found is the Center for Loss and Life Transition, and we'll continue with that. But remember, there are, if you're in distress, or anybody else that you know that's in distress, there's numbers to call, 911 for immediate, and remember, there's always hope.